Myself. My name is Kim Portee, and I am a senior manager for McKesson RXO. I've been a part of the organization for just over 9 years. I've got about 30 years of experience in healthcare, and I know I'm dating myself, but yes, 30 years in healthcare. My background's really been started in claims administration with a TPA, and then I went over to the PBM side of business and then did a small pivot partway through my career. My story, as you know, as anyone has had this week, it's not unique, but I'll tell you a little bit about it because it really tells the story behind my passion, my drive, and how I got into the patient assistance arena. 21 years ago, my mom had a near catastrophic stroke. I'm in the healthcare industry, so I'm thinking, well, I know it all. I can do it all. I'm good. That didn't happen. Bills started rolling in, and I'm getting claims and EOBs, and my dad's just writing checks that aren't going through, and he's paying everybody for everything. And I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? And it was during that time where I realized, there's got to be some sort of opportunity where people help patients. People help those people who don't know what they're supposed to pay and what they're not supposed to pay. So my pivot was into patient assistance because I thought, there's got to be someone. And if there's not someone, it's going to be me. I can take on the world here. That's what I thought. When we talk about teams and resource planning, the biggest piece of that in patient assistance is, we want to help everyone, right? We say one patient at a time. And that's great in theory, but the patients don't wait. They keep coming. And there's usually more patients than you can actually help. And that's the insomniac of me at night. And I'm thinking, how can I do this better? How can I make sure that I'm helping more patients? So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit in detail about tactics to build your business case. So when you're speaking to your key stakeholders, you can talk to them about your need for additional resources. You can really build that emotional story, build that relatable emotional story to tell to them or speak to them about resources, getting additional resources for whether it be overtime or whether it be additional staff so that you're able to expand your footprint across the industry and across the health system. Small agenda, so introduction, which I've already done, obviously. We're going to define a business case. We're going to then jump into some steps to develop a solid business case. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about leveling up your business case because that's important, right? That's what they see and that's what they're going to take with them. And then I'll leave some time for questions, but I will also say that we have 3 roundtables later on today in a couple of hours. So if you do have more questions as well, I'm happy to meet with you and talk to you about it. So as a senior manager with oversight of multiple large health systems, I was used to really running our business with an agile but sometimes really lean team. You can imagine that leads to less than optimal results when your customer base expands, right? You're thinking, I only have 3 people, but I'm getting more customers. And that might be great in essence, but you have to have people to do the work. That's the most important piece. I had to really shift my focus from providing just the necessary additional resources to ensure the team didn't lose momentum or miss an opportunity to help those patients. That's the worst call, I think, for me is I've been calling and no one's calling me back. And, you think about your patients and you think about your team and, we're running really, really lean, but how do we still get the additional resources? How do we still get that patient assistance to that patient that's on the other end of the phone? So our path to really eliminate financial toxicity and really improve medication adherence, what does that mean? It means that right now in today's economy, we're seeing an increased need for patient assistance, but we really don't have the resources or the staffing that helps fulfill that need. So we want to really for myself, I thought, I have above average managerial skills, but there's politics. There's really, the persuasive politics that you have to get into to make sure that you are meeting with your stakeholders to provide those, the documentation of the resources. So on today's agenda, we're going to talk about the overview. We're going to go through the steps And I'm going to really dig into how we're going to level up your business case so that when you're sitting in front of your C-suite, your key stakeholders, you're gaining that approval. Thanks. Okay. Go back one more, sorry. I apologize. Okay. All right. So the daunting business case, what is it? It's definitely different than a business plan, but that took me a little bit of time to figure out. It tells a story, and while it might sound scary, it's really just a story about your company that you're looking at, and it provides a solution-based proposal, and it really helps your organization make a decision on an investment that is it going to align with their strategic goals? Is it going to align with their initiatives? What does that look like? And it's really depending on you digging in, doing that analysis, and examining the opportunities, looking at the project scope and the financial investment that's going to be needed to create the value for the organization. Because bottom line, it needs to bring value. It has to bring value to my organization for me to really get behind what you're selling. It really answers the fundamental questions for your key stakeholders, which are, is the project worth doing? What's going to be the return on our investment? And how will it benefit our customers and our patients? So let me start by saying this, and this was hard for me to hear and hard for me to know up front, but please get used to hearing the word no first. Also get used to hearing, can you clarify that for me? Those are important. Arm and prepare yourself to really think strategically and critically about what your ask is. What is your why? Why do we need to do this? Why should we do this? So there's so many Office products and templates available, and I'm a Googler. That's me. There's a multitude of resources that are really out there that will help you build your business case. I'm not going to shamelessly plug myself here, but I use this Smart Sheets. Very easy. It's free form. It's editable, but it really gives you an opportunity to delve in, and I'm going to hope I don't fall and run over here, but it gives you an opportunity to really delve into the fields here and talk through what your project is. What's your project, right? We're going to describe the problem. We're going to talk about what does this project aim to solve? What are we doing? What are we trying to solve for? We're going to get into our limitations, and that's where you're really telling your team and your key stakeholders, this is what is going to prevent the success of the project. If we don't have X, we're not going to get to Z. So you're really getting into the meat and potatoes. Equipment, is it training? Is it people? What are you needing exactly what is this going to solve? And then we're going to go into our request. What is needed to get from your limitations to your request? What do you need to be able to fulfill that? You're going to talk about your benefits. In your benefits, you're going to list the benefits that the project will bring to the organization. Those are important key pieces, but make sure at the top, you take credit for your work. This is something that is, I cannot tell you that it will take you maybe an hour. I probably spent several hours back and forth with revisions, back and forth, before I got my first true business case down to a science where I was like, okay, I can speak to this. This looks great. Take credit for your work. So I'm going to go into each of the bullets that we talked about just a little bit more in detail. So in your project section, again, you're really going to want to talk about your project. What's your opportunity? What is the opportunity? What are you trying to solve here? Your project, you're going to list your project leader, your role, what the project title is, and again, what do you want to improve with your health system? Okay. And your limitations, what are your limiting factors? What are the negative impacts if we don't provide this resource, if we don't provide additional resources? What are going to be the negative impacts to the organization? Again, that's important, right? It's always great to say it is going to add this much value, but make sure that you add but if we don't, these are going to be the negative impacts to the organization. Talk on your request again, all eyes are going to be on you. This is where you're really going to have them step up and, all eyes are on you now because they want to know, what do you need from me? Why am I here? Why am I in this room? What are we talking about? Be prepared to discuss your needs, but not only the equipment, not only the resources, know your numbers. They matter. They matter. They absolutely matter. You'll hear me say this often because your key stakeholders are going to want to know, again, what is this going to cost? What are the salaries needed? How did you calculate that? Where did you pull this data from? Though that's information that you want to make sure that you're armed with when you're documenting your business case. They're going to ask. We also want to talk about a timeline. How long will this be needed? And when we talk about a timeline, think about your fires. Think about any obstacles. Think about barriers or challenges that may throw you off your course. So be realistic on your timeline. While I know it's great, we want to be overzealous sometimes and we want to say, oh, we can get this done in 30 days. Think about the fact that you may have some of your resources that are out sick, or you may have some of your resources that have decided, I committed to this 2 weeks ago, but I don't think I can do it today. Something has changed and steered you off course. So build in time for those obstacles, but also document. Make sure that you're re-reviewing that plan. So if you're meeting weekly, if you're meeting bi-weekly, that your project is on time and that you're still moving forward as you had suggested with your key stakeholders. And this is important when you're talking to your key stakeholders, because they want to know, how are you going to keep this project on time? How are we going to know where we are? What are our points? How are we going to know that you've met budget here, or you've met budget there, or you've met the time frame? So meeting bi-weekly, weekly, meeting monthly, whatever your time frame is for your project, review, meet. And if there are obstacles and challenges and barriers, make sure you come back to the drawing board. Let's talk about this as a team so that we can move past those. And the benefits, this is where all eyes again will be on you. So this is where your key stakeholders are going to want to hear about what is the potential return. What am I going to get back on? And we hear ROI all the time. What's my return on my investment? They want to know what is going to be the value that this is going to bring to the organization, and know your calculation methodology. I can't tell you how many times I sit in front of a leader and she's like, well, how did you get to that number? That's not something you want to do, right? Because that leads to the questions and the whole poking of, your other information. So make sure that you know your calculations, you know how to calculate them. You know how to speak to them when they are presented. And also, always don't be afraid to tie each of the benefits that you reference back to the overall business strategy for your organization, because you really want to discuss quantitatively what's the percent, what's the dollar amount of the increased revenue, or qualitatively by showing the organization what the increase in potential in this case would be if we're going to add additional resources to our staff so we could expand PAP across the footprint of the industry. Document that. Document how many more lives you're going to touch, how many more patients you're going to touch, how many more clinics you're going to actually be engaged in with these additional resources. So how do we create it? We're going to go through my six-step simple process, and this is what really keeps me aligned with what we're doing on the business case. So we're going to state the challenge, right? We're starting with our why. Again, we're identifying the business need that we're addressing. That's important. Provide a solution that outlines the plan to achieve your goal of bringing on additional resources or staff to handle the increase of patient volume. We're going to outline the costs that are associated with that solution and what are the costs to the organization, right? What will be the cost that those additional resources are going to add? You're really wanting to dig into the cost of the salaries, the number of overtime hours, maybe it's the cost of adding additional staff. Lay out that number in plain text. And again, make sure you know your numbers and you're aware of how to calculate, how to speak to the calculations that you've added. We're going to outline the benefits and related business gains that the additional resources will add and what's the value to the organization. But again, highlight what is the cost of inaction? What will be the negative impact to the organization? What's the consequences of adding the resources? What's the consequences of not adding the resources? Talk about what your biggest risks are. Every project brings some level of risk. You're not going to have a project that does not bring a level of risk. So talk about that. And you want to ensure that your stakeholders that they're involved and they have this information because they're going to be taking this away to make an educated decision. We're going to, again, provide a timeline on the length of the project, how long the resources will be needed, and you're going to have a definite start and end time for the project. If that changes, because again, remember, we're reviewing, we're meeting weekly, bi-weekly. If that changes, come back to the drawing board and make sure your key stakeholders are involved. Make sure they're aware of what that timeline changes. You're going to leverage change management. Big one here. You always need to discuss how you're going to implement this, how you're going to document it, how are you going to track this, how am I going to know that this project is on time and it's on budget, and that you're going to meet your deliverables. Remind your executives of the cost of inaction, talk about the best practice you intend to follow, so that the project will bring the successful outcome you've discussed. Lastly, when we level up our business case, it's important that we bring everything together with a summary. So again, as I talked about in the previous slide, we have a one-page document. Make sure you cover the basics in that document. The problem, what's the solution? What's the cost, potential return, and what's the time frame? Try to keep it to 1 to 2 bullets per section. Don't be too wordy, but again, make sure you can speak to it when you're speaking to your key stakeholders. And in this one-page summary, that might be the only thing they take away from that meeting. So make sure that you sum it up, make it concise, make it engaging, but non-technical, right? Because not a lot of our, we may talk PAP, PAP, and we then may have that document go to our stakeholders and they're like, what's PAP? What are we talking about? They know it in non-jargon. And I so make sure that you use a non-technical language. If you're presenting in a remote environment, don't be afraid to turn your camera on. I'm the biggest, like, no camera today. Turn your camera on. Let them see and hear the passion in your voice. How important is this to you? How important is this to your team? Okay. Go ahead. And lastly, let's level up your business case, right? We're going to add some finishing touches. And for me, what's helped me in my business cases is by really engaging that human element, telling an emotional story, right? This is your differentiator of your business case. Talk about how what is the human piece of your business case? The facts and figures, they're important. They are. I always say, again, know your numbers. They are important. But the best way to hook your key stakeholders is through telling your story. The villain, what's the problem the organization is trying to solve? What are you trying to solve? The problem, what's at stake? What's going to happen if it's not fixed? Talk to me about what's going to happen. The hero, what's your proposed solution? Who's coming in with the red cape? Who's saving the day? What are we doing? That's your solution. Don't forget design. Visual, straightforward slides are great. Make sure that they're not hard to read, have a lot of unnecessary details. You lose your audience very quickly by having too many unnecessary details. Take advantage of feedback. Presenting to key stakeholders, it's intimidating. It's intimidating for me. I can't tell you how many times before I got up here today, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I know it's intimidating. It's very intimidating. Practice, 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 and put your best foot forward by doing a dry run with your coworkers to make sure that your business case covers the right ground. When I say that, I say, present to someone outside of your department, someone who has no idea of what you do. That's where they're going to poke holes in your theory. They're going to ask you questions. And those questions are going to be thought-provoking questions that cause you to rethink and realign with your strategic goals and initiatives. That's it. That's all I had.